Don't you love this guy? We're quoting his own material, and he's asked, how do I know? We're quoting Al-Bukhari, your own hadith compiler. I don't know, I wasn't there. But was Al-Bukhari there?
No.
Was Al-Bukhari there?
No.
When did Al-Bukhari die?
870.
When did this happen? 652. Do your own maths.
Was Muhammad even not there when that happened? Muhammad wasn't there when Uthman burned all the Qurans. Muhammad wasn't there when those Qurans have been sent to 9 different cities because he was long dead.
Okay, folks, that means they should have 9 Qurans today. Am I correct?
9 perfect Quran, Surah 1 to Surah 114.
We want Muslims to show us those 9 Qurans. Where are the 9 Qurans? Where are they? Don't you love that passion? Don't you love that passion? Bye-bye, and he walks off. Can you see why he's upset? Because we're questioning everything he believes. Without the Quran being sacrosanct, without the Quran being perfect, if the Quran has any hint of human intervention, you then can no longer depend on the Quran from God. For the Muslim, it has to be the eternal Quran. For the Muslim, every dot, every letter, every word, every verse has to exactly be the same. So when we are asking these questions, no wonder he gets upset. I would be upset if I was a Muslim and hearing this. But we're not saying anything that Al-Bukhari hadn't already said. We're just reading Al-Bukhari.
So Islamic tradition makes Muslims to walk away from their own Quran.
From their own Quran, from their own arguments. Now, so where are those 9 Qurans? Muslims cannot come up with even one of them. There's no Quran from the 7th century. So what Qurans do they have? We're going to show you 6. The 6 best Qurans they have. These are the 6 most authoritative Qurans. Let's go ahead and name them. Hatun, what's this one here?
So first one is Topkapı Musaf, which is based in Istanbul in Turkey.
Okay, in the Topkapı Palace there in Istanbul.
Yeah, in Topkapı Museum. Yeah, so when we look at this Quran, remember we are asking one perfect Quran from Surah 1 to Surah 114, exactly the same what Muslims are reading today.
And how much of the Quran is this? Is this complete?
This is not complete Quran, let alone it has 2,270 variations.
290.
2,290.
2,290.
No, 17.
Are you again? Okay, we'll go with her. She's the woman.
No.
She's my boss today. So we'll go 2,270. I stand corrected. You're right. It is 2,270.
So,
see how obedient I am? Don't you love it?
You need to be obedient to Christ,
so
not to me.
What are manuscript variants? Explain to them what a manuscript variant is.
So when we put the 2 texts together, if there is any written version of the word do not match with one another, we would identify that as textual variations.
Let me give you an example right here. We have the Topkapı right here with the Allah on the side. And when you look at Allah, you will see that it is a version. Go ahead and keep talking while I bring it up. So right here is the Topkapı. So here's an example of what we're talking about. You can see that Allah has been added at a later date.
So this is Surah 66 verse 8. When we put this manuscripts with the current Quran together, with this one together, we see Surah 66 verse 8 is different.
It has the word Allah in it, but the Topkapı did not have the word Allah in it.
It was inserted intentionally into the manuscript.
At a later date. You can see it's in the margin. It's not as big as the other letters. It is much smaller, written in a different nib at a later time. Okay, are you following that? Why did they need the name Allah there? Because you don't need the name Allah in that verse. Let me give you some other examples. Here's another example. This is from the Codex Fustat Umayyad Codex from the 8th century. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different places where Allah has been added at a later date. Did they forget the name of their God? So why did they have to put Allah in here? You don't need Allah in any of these verses because it's understood it's talking about God. Why did they put Allah at the top above it? You can see in a completely different name at a completely later time. Do you know the answer? Does our German friend know the answer?
What?
Can you repeat that again?
What is this? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
She can't get what you're trying to prove. What are you trying to prove?
Okay, she doesn't understand what we're trying to prove. What do the Muslims say about the Quran? Has it ever changed in 1400 years? Never. Every Muslim, we went through the scholars, you weren't here when we read them and quoted them. Every major Muslim scholar today says that the Quran we have in our hand is exactly the same that which was written and compiled by Uthman in 652. Now this is from the late 8th century. This is 100 years later. It is not from the time of Uthman. In fact, none of these Qurans are from the time of Uthman. They are all from the 8th and 9th century. Uthman lived in the mid 7th century. Yet here they have added 9 different Allahs, 9 different cases where the name of Allah had to be added to the text. But you don't need to add it to the text. It would have been perfectly okay if they did not have the name Allah there. So why did they add it to the text? Do you want to know why? Does anybody want to know why? They added it to the text in every case so that it corresponds with the present Hafs text, the text we use today. The Hafs text has Allah in every one of these places. That's why they had to add Allah at a later date. Hold on a minute. So what is the Hafs text, you ask? We'll get to that. Let's continue on.
So when we look at the Topkapı Musaf, which we were looking at, what we see is it has nothing to do with Islamic Prophet Muhammad. It has nothing to do with Uthman, let alone it has nothing to do with the current Quran, 1236 verses. Yet that Quran is not the Topkapı Quran. We see there are 2270 textual variations in the Topkapı Quran.
You know, she is right. I was wrong by 20. I give up. Okay, what about this one right here? This is the second most important one.
Okay, let me just give the date for the Topkapı. Also, Topkapı manuscripts are been dated approximately 70 years after the Uthman. And also what we see is certain
I'm going to challenge you on that. Parts of the Topkapı.
I said approximate.
But also some of it comes from the 2nd century AH, which means after 719.
Yes.
So well into the 8th century. So parts of the Topkapı, she is correct, are written between the beginning of the 8th century up until 720. But other parts of the Topkapı are written as possibly up to 850, even 870.
So approximately 5 pages of this Quran is written by someone else.
Someone else.
Yes.
In a different hand.
Yep.
And who are the ones that did the research on this? They're from your country.
Muslims.
They are Muslims, but what are their names?
Tayyar Altıkılıç
Dr. Tayyar Altıkılıç
and İhsanoğlu.
Dr. Ekmelidin İhsanoğlu. So both Muslim scholars, considered to be the world's leading Muslim scholars today, they are the first ones to look at all of the 6 major manuscripts from 2002 to 2007. They took 5 years to research these manuscripts. They were given access to every one of these manuscripts. We are using their research. Let me repeat that. We're using their research to show you the problems with the Quran today. Let's continue on.
So next one we have is the Samarkand.
Come right here.
That's the Samarkand. It is sadly has nothing to do with Muhammad, has nothing to do with Uthman, and it has nothing to do with the current Quran we are reading. Remember, we are looking at simple Quran. 114 chapters, 6,236 verses from the time of Muhammad. Yet Samarkand has been actually dated 8th century.
8th century. Remember, Uthman supposedly finished the Quran in 652. That's mid-7th century. So we're talking 50, 60, 70 years later. But this only goes up to Surah 43. There's 114 surahs in the Quran.
I don't want to be mean, Jay, but some of this Quran, part of this Quran has been carbon dated, and carbon dating goes 855.
Oh dear.
I don't want to be mean.
Mid-9th century. Much too late. What's more, of the 43 surahs that are there, how many surahs are complete? Only one. All of the others have missing. How many surahs don't even exist amongst the 43?
Let me read it. Surah 1 is not there. Surah 8 is not there. 9 is not there. 10 is not there. 13 is not there. 21, 22, 23, 24 is not there. 25 is not there. 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35 is not there.
That is 18 surahs are missing. Of the 43 they claim are there. So why do they say this is complete? Can you see the Muslims have been lying to us all these years?
All these
You
years.
need to make sure that you quote what the scholars are saying. Do not listen to what the Muslims are saying. You need to go to scholarship. This is considered to be one of the greatest of the manuscripts. What does Al-Takulit say about the Arabic in this manuscript?
I think he doesn't think person who wrote the Arabic well knew the
He
Arabic.
says whoever wrote this Quran did not know their Arabic very well. There are grammatical mistakes. There is lazy writing written by about 5 different scribes. He says don't even use it. Don't even use it, he says.
It says undiscipled spelling, scribal mistakes, copyright mistakes, written by amateur.
Written by amateurs like you and me. Now let's go to the third one.
For sure it wasn't me who wrote it down, Jay.
Okay, now this is the one that's here in the British Library. This is the one we have right down the street. This is the Ma'il Quran, known as the 2165 manuscript. It's called Ma'il because it's slanted. Ma'il means slanted in Arabic. So this concerned many Muslims believe that this was the greatest manuscript. It only goes up to Surah 43. It only contains 53% of the Quran, but it does contain more than the Samarkand. So that's at least one thing in favor. What kind of script is it? Ma'il, that's Hijazi. And what do we know about the Hijazi?
Just before that, I want to make sure that we all understand this Quran has nothing to do with Muhammad. This Quran has nothing to do with Uthman. So this is not the Quran. I am looking to be exactly the same with 114 chapters of the Quran.
This only goes up to Surah 43.
Yeah.
Now, can you see? I'm sorry, I meant 53. Let's go continue on. What was the date for this Quran? Because there's a huge dispute concerning the date.
I think you need to remind me that.
When Martin Links, who was responsible for all the manuscript, who is a Muslim, convert to Islam, has been responsible for the manuscript for many, many years. When he dated this manuscript, he dated it to 790, late 8th century. When Baker, the current curator for the manuscripts, when he became curator, he put it down to 690. Someone telephoned him, and after 10 minutes of talking to him, asking him how did he come to 690, they said, would you mind if we brought down a reporter to interview you? 2 weeks later, it went back to 790. What does that tell you, Hatun?
It has.
Colin Baker did not know what he was doing. But then who is Colin Baker and what is his expertise? He is a medical scientist. He only studies medical works. He doesn't study Quran. He doesn't even know Arabic.
Why does
So how is he dating it to the 7th century? Now,
That's my
Islamic
question.
Awareness and the Dawah team have quoted him. But they don't realize that he didn't even know what he was talking about. Martin Links knows much more what he's talking about. But can you see what we're dealing with? We are finding folk scientists who are dating these Qurans. You need to go to the Arabists, those who know, who are using paleographical studies to understand how to date it. Now, what about this one over here?
So that is the Paris manuscripts. It has lots of on it, and it has nothing to do again with Muhammad, with Uthman.
Could you get my coat?
It has nothing to do with Muhammad, with Uthman, and it has nothing to do with the current Quran we are reading today. What we are looking is 114 chapters, 6,236 verses, exactly the same what we are reading, and Paris is not the answer to that question.
There are actually 3 or 4 Paris manuscripts, are there not?
Yeah, 328, 300.
328A, 328C. These are actually different pieces. Some of them, one of them is 16% of the Quran. The other one is 22% of the Quran. So neither of these are complete. Am I correct?
None of them are complete.
Do they have manuscript variants?
They don't contain manuscripts variations as well as not the full Quran.
Not the full Quran. In fact, when we look at the the Arab BNF 328A, it has over 93 has 93 manuscript variants in just the 22% that it contains. Now these are words or phrases that are different in the Quran today from these manuscripts, proving that someone changed them along the way, that there has been correction along the way.
Let me just tell you in summary what we have. We have Arabic 331, which is only 87% of the Quran, 87 folios. We have Arabic 330G, it is only 43 folios. Arabic 320C, only 18 folios. So none of them gives us the one perfect Quran which Muslims have been claiming to.
Now, Islamic Awareness website and Dawah team here believe that this is a 7th century manuscript. They believe that this one is a 7th century manuscript. They believe that these 4 that we have shown you are all written before 719, within the 1st century of Islam AH. We're going to get to that question, but let's go at 2 more manuscripts that I find this one especially is the most exciting. This is the Husayni manuscript. The Husayni manuscript is found in Egypt, in Cairo, and some people call it the Cairo manuscript as well.
Yeah.
Is it the full manuscript? Is it the full Quran?
No, it's not full Quran. It's only 1,087 folios. It's not the full Quran, and it is dated in 2nd century Hijrah, which is 8th century.
Possibly some say even 9th century. Durosh says 9th century. What about this Quran here? Because this one is the most exciting. This was discovered in 1975 in Yemen, in Sana'a, in the Sana'a Mosque. When they were clearing it out, they fell to the ground. And when they looked at it, unlike the German lady over here, they could not read it. Even though she said you could read it quite easily. Nobody in Yemen could read it because it had no diacritical marks and it had no vowels. So who did they have to fly down to read this manuscript?
German guy?
The Germans. And who were they? Gerd Quinn, Dr. von Bothmer, and Dr. Oli. The 3 most authoritative authorities on the early Arabic script. They are from Saarland University in Saarbrücken, Western Germany. They were flown down in 1981 to look at this manuscript. They immediately realized that this manuscript was very early because it had no diacritical marks, it had no vowelization. They quickly took pictures of every one of the pages. They put them on the microfilm. The Yemeni government started hearing what they were saying, and they quickly confiscated their microfilms. This is what you do when you don't like what you hear. You either burn manuscripts or you confiscate manuscripts. Are you right? Burning and confiscating. It's going to get better. Hold on. So here, they confiscated their manuscripts until 1997 when they finally released the microfilms to them. This is a picture of one of those pages. Take a look here. You can see Surah 19. Where that yellow mark is, it jumps to Surah 22. What happened to Surah 20 and 21?
Good question.
It appears on this side. Can you see it's a completely different script? A completely different text. This is about 60 years after this one. There's 60 years between these 2 pages. That is Hijazi on this side. This is a later Kufic script, or a later what they some call a Western Hijazi. Now what's fascinating, when you look at this, you can see that this is a evolving text. Are you following that? An evolving text. But that's not all that they found. When they looked at it carefully, they noticed that parts of it had a lower script on it. Can you see there are two different scripts there? Somebody wrote on this to begin with in Arabic, and then they washed it off and wrote over top.
They wrote it the Quranic verses in Arabic, they washed it and then they rewrite the Quranic verses. It's not any writing, it is the Quranic verses. And today, we are able to read what was the underwriting.
Now, when you wash off, remember, these are all written on animal skins. Because they're so durable, you can wash it off. And when you wash it off, it looks like there's nothing left, right? So that's why they wrote over top. What they didn't realize is that after 1,300 years, that ink starts to bleed through. And so when you put it under ultraviolet light, you can see the lower text. Now the lower text has now been distinguished and has now been pulled aside, sorry, that's not the right word, has been extricated from the upper text. Asma Hilali wrote a book in 2017. So 2 years ago, September 2017, she has now shown the entire lower text. And what do we now know about that lower text?
So there are 63 verses underwriting, and there are 70 variations within the 63 verses.
And what kind of variations are there? There are verbal differences. 25 times it has different nouns, articles, participles, and conjunctions. There are prepositions, isolated letters, 29 times, and expressions that are different between the lower text and the Quran we have today. Entire sentences, 16 times, entire sentences are included in the lower text than what we have in the Quran today. Some overlap within the verses. So how do you deal with that? How did Asma Hilali deal with it? Remember, Asma Hilali is a Muslim. How did she answer that?
They were probably written by amateurs or students.
This is a school text, she called it. A school text means it's written by a student who didn't know any better. Now, what's the problem with that?
You trust the eternal word of Allah, which is supposed to affect the eternity of people, to a student.
Why would you allow a student to write on parchment? This is animal skin. This is the most expensive form of writing. Remember, the early church did not have parchment. The early church, all the Bibles were written on papyrus until the 325, until Constantine, who was the emperor, became a Christian, made it the national religion. He therefore commissioned 50 of these codices.
Made it legal for you to be Christian.
Okay, can you see? He was the one that commissioned codices for the Council of Nicaea. So you don't have, even the early church didn't have manuscripts like that. They would be prohibitively expensive to write on animal skin. Just the Sinaiticus alone, the New Testament, Sinaiticus, you have to have 62 different deer skins to make that one codex. Who could have and who could make that unless you were wealthy? So can you see, why would they give this to students? Secondly, why is it a student's text is the oldest Quran in history? We don't have anything older, and it belongs to a student. Thirdly, why did they then write over top? Now the upper part of the Quran, this upper text, is dated to 705 and later. The lower text is possibly dated to 680 and later. Whatever the case is, you can see there are two completely different Qurans. So what is the conclusion of Dr. Elizabeth Pritt, who is the one who has done all the work on this manuscript? Do you know her conclusion?
You give me the conclusion and then I will add something.
This is a nascent Quran with corrections then washed off and rewritten in 705.
And different ayahs,
So
not just saying.
here's the problem. Here's the problem. When we look at the other earliest manuscripts, what we see is when someone makes a mistake or miss something, you just insert the word there. But in Sana manuscripts, we see whole words are being washed away, and then they rewrite something 50 years after with the different verses. So something has been done intentionally to get rid of what was written before.
Okay.
Because if it was simple student mistakes, we would see the insertions or corrections, not the full washed away script.
The fact that this is the earliest Quran, the fact that they say is written by a student, the fact that the upper text does not agree with the lower text, the fact that the lower text disagrees in 70 places with the Quran we have today, yet it's only 63 verses long, proves that this is a completely different Quran. And that's why, folks, we're now saying it looks like they created the Quran and changed it already during the time of Abdul Malik. Where's that German lady? She talks about Abdul Malik. Can you see? Abdul Malik does have something to say for this. Abdul Malik is the one that had to create the Quran because he was the one that introduced the Prophet, did he not?
He did.
And he produced it on the Dome of the Rock, on the coins, and on the caliphal protocols.
So we look at the earliest big manuscripts and we say actually none of them are from Muhammad, none of them from Uthman, and none of them is exactly the same what we are reading today. But also we see, as we look at those manuscripts, some of them are being dated with the carbon dating.
Okay.
So they looked at the date of the skin, date of
The Birmingham
material.
folios in 2015. Remember that when that was all over the news? BBC ran it front and center. Do you remember this in 2015? The oldest Quran has now been discovered because they took a part of the Birmingham folios, they took it to Oxford laboratories, they carbon dated it from 568 to 645. Muhammad was born in 570 and died in 632. So this covers the lifespan of Muhammad. And
So-
what did they say immediately?
miracle of Islam is Muhammad received his revelation 2 years before he was born.
Now, most Muslims would say, forget about the first dates because the first dates predate Muhammad's life. Let's go to the latest date, 645.
That's discredits what Uthman did. According to Islamic tradition, Uthman ordered everything to be burned. But we have a manuscripts, according to Muslims, they are written down 5 years before Uthman burned
7 years
everything.
before Uthman died. Now,
652,
can
yeah,
you
sorry.
see why Muslim scholars have not supported that manuscript? They realize there's a problem here. And the problem is carbon dating. Because if you're going to use that carbon dating, you've got to use these carbon datings. You've got to use not just the Oxford, you've got to go to Lyon in France, you've got to go to Kiel in Germany, you've got to go to Zurich in Switzerland, and you've got to go to Oxford, the 4 major carbon dating laboratories here in Europe. They are now carbon dating the Sana'a manuscript, considered to be the greatest manuscript, right? And what are the dates they're getting for the Sana'a manuscript?
It starts from 390 to goes to 650.
550.
Yeah, but all together, when you put them all together.
These 4 here, from all 4 laboratories for the Sana'a A, go from 390 to 550. What's the problem with that?
Muhammad was not even conceived. Islam has not even started.
Muhammad wasn't even born for 20 years.
Not 20 years, right? 330.
Well, 390, that's over 100 years.
300.
They already have manuscripts of the Sana'a manuscript.
Shall
So how is it that you can get the Sana'a manuscript from Surah 18, Surah 19, and Surah 20 that is from 4th century when Muhammad doesn't even appear on the scene until the 6th century?
So 200 years before the birth of Muhammad, we have the Quranic manuscripts.
Okay, what's going on here? And what do you think's going on here, Hassan?
We cannot trust the carbon dating when it comes to the dating of the manuscripts, because they give us different dates. They give us different dates, and we cannot trust that.
That's one answer. There's another answer. Let's just say hypothetically that the Birmingham folios are correct. What do they contain? Surah 18, Surah 19, and Surah 20. What do they talk about?
Surah 19 is about Jesus. Surah 18 is about Moses. Surah 18 is Alexander the Great. Surah 20 is about Moses. So those stories which were known to the mankind before.
Okay, let's look at the stories a little bit more carefully. In Surah 18, we have the story of Dual Quranic, which is Alexander the Great. That is well known by 390, am I correct?
Yes.
Because Alexander the Great lived in the 3rd century BC, has 3 biographies written about him. So if that is 390 is correct, that would make sense. Surah 20 and 19 and 20 talk about the 7 sleepers of Ephesus. That was a well-known story by the 3rd and 4th century AD, am I correct?
So Islam, the writings confirms the stories which were existed before Islam.
Before Islam, and they were well known by the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, up until the 6th century. If the carbon dating is correct, these just tell us really that these are the earlier stories. Why? Because much of the Quran has been borrowed. It comes from these sources.
Why did Allah, I wouldn't say borrow, because I don't see in anywhere Allah got a permission from someone else to put those verses in the Quran.
Okay,
why did Allah stole the stories which are not in the previous books?
They were going to give them back later on,
So
all right?
what do you do
Be nice to them.
What do you do to the people who steal the things in Islam? You chop their hand off. So should we chop the right hands of Allah? But that's different.
Okay, here we go. So if this is the case now, Hatun, if this is the case, where is that earliest Quran? Why is it we're still asking the same question?
Yahya, we are asking, where is your earliest Quran, Yahya? So,
Hey Muslims, where is your
Simple
earliest
question.
Quran?
I'm coming over.
where is the
I'm coming
earliest
over.
Quran?
The Quran was recited orally by the Prophet, and it's not possible that after 23 years you come and claim.
Prove it.
Yeah.
Prove it.
Did you know, see, he is not saying it was written down, he is saying it was orally recited. How many of you believe that? But yet, the Muslims claim it was written down at the time of Uthman. Why does he not walk away?
Jay, also remember something about oral tradition. If oral tradition was so perfect, if oral tradition is so powerful, then why do we have Sunni Muslims and Shia Muslims? They both of them come from the oral tradition, and their oral tradition is different. That
I want to
tells
see a
us
written Quran.